on
Who's
YouTube.
driving this ship?
It's a great question. I drove it last week. I feel like it's Asha's turn to drive.
What? No, I don't even
Jordan,
know what
Jordan's
tweets
logo.
you want to talk about.
It is my logo, but this is
I'm driving the screen share.
That's right. He's carrying his load, or pulling his weight. Carrying his load.
I'll bring my huge followership.
That's right. Okay. I wish
So
you'd bring your.
are we live?
My
Are we doing it
mom.
live?
We're live. We're live. Anyhow, guys, welcome to the TGFB podcast, which is also known as potentially the To the Unknown Pod. Okay, listen. If you don't get that, this is not the podcast for you. That is we'll just leave that. That's a deep cut for the kids. But To the Unknown Pod, episode 3. Welcome. My name is Jordan Bush. I'm the director of TGFB Media. We exist to help Christians understand and use Bitcoin for the glory of God and the good of people everywhere. And today, again, I am joined by Oshawa Hawthorne, Jim McAndrew, Oshawa of Brilliance Labs, Jim of the McNalia Foundation. We are not joined by Tim.
Did you just say McNalia?
Oops.
McNalia?
No, Jim McAndrew of the Magnalia Foundation.
What does that word even mean?
Tim's not here, so I don't know.
It's something about worship. I remember.
Great things. It means great things.
Yeah, we're not joined by Tim. Tim is being a good dad and father, spending time with his children. And so we're sad. Pour one out for him. Maybe next time. Guys, how you doing?
Great. I'm in Texas, so I'm sweating.
That's right. You're in. Are we allowed to say? Are we allowed to tell people where you are right now? I mean,
You're gonna dox me. I'm actually not in Austin. I'm just outside of Austin, somewhere in the greater Austin area.
All right. And then Oshawa is driving around the world doing all kinds of things. Broke into a random house to record.
I'm using my church basement.
Dedication.
But he brings his mic around with him.
I'm always ready to go.
Man, speaking of, do you guys remember those old Foster's beer commercials? Where they were like,
yeah, of course.
Oh my gosh, those are so great. Anyhow, it just made me think of it. Okay. Guys, what do we want to talk about today? What are we doing?
Okay. Let's cue it up here. Let's see. On deck. Not this one. This one.
Yeah, hold on. Let's give a little intro. We forget. We're just taking for granted that people understand what this is. Basically, we get together once a week because it is more than once a week. We look at Twitter and we see tweets that are appealing to us on a number of levels, whether spiritually or just in terms of Bitcoin or in terms of, theology or just random things. And so we just wanted a space where we could come and kind of talk about any one of the above. We're going to do mostly more serious things, and then at the end, we'll kind of leave space for our favorite memes and the like. So it looks like this episode we're going to start with the Bitcoin Core in crisis. Bitcoin Core.
Good. Mechanic saying Bitcoin Core actively sabotaging Bitcoin, and then he released a hour and a half long rant video at 3 a.m. You guys seen this video?
I did.
No, I was sleeping.
I watched the entire. I didn't watch it live. Goodness gracious! I did not Bill O'Reilly it and watch it live. No, this is. I watched it this morning. It's a great video. He does a great job. And Mechanic is a friend. Full. What's that word?
Disclosure.
Full disclosure. But he did a great job. So, Jim, if you had to explain the Bitcoin Core controversy to someone like, maybe me,
like Jordan,
it's a IQ of 74.5. Like, how would you describe it? What's the issue?
Okay. So I think the easiest analogy is just spam in your email. Yeah. So the question is spam good or bad for an email user experience? The answer is everybody knows spam's bad.
Yeah.
So then the question becomes, well, what is spam? And it's kind of like porn. You know it when you see it, right? It's hard to say what is spam, but you know it when you see it. In the case of Bitcoin, there's a bunch of people that want to inscribe things on the blockchain, maybe just their name or something like that. Satoshi himself had an inscription at the very beginning, right? Sure. Chancellor on the brink. So I think there's always been an idea that you could put arbitrary data into the blockchain but then it should be limited in some way because we know the primary use case of Bitcoin is as
Yeah.
a monetary network, not a distributed file storage system, which is what
100%.
other altcoins. So that's kind of the question. So the question is, should we continue to try to be stringent with our spam filters or not? And if we're going to be stringent, how is that any different than censorship? I thought as libertarian, anarcho-capitalists, minarchists, whatever you want to call it, we're supposed to be against censorship. So if you're against this pull request, you are for censorship, I guess.
Yeah, this is where it's really important to reason well, and to reason and just understand that. I mean, this is where I feel like being a Christian ought to be an aid in helping to understand this, because we go to Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes. We find out that there's a time for everything under heaven. There's a time to live, there's a time to die, or time to be born, time to die, time to build up, there's a time to tear down. It's a time for lots of things. Okay. And so with that, there are, again, there's gradations to things, right? So like if someone were to say, you might have somebody like Jim, okay, who just doesn't eat sugar. This makes sense, right? Now, there's a difference between someone who is eating only, or who eats pure refined sugar, and someone who eats fruit and gets sugar indirectly, or like a more pure form sugar. Those are, on paper, you could call someone who ate fruit but not any refined sugar a hypocrite, right? You could be like, hey, you're such a hypocrite. You said you don't eat sugar, but you're eating sugar indirectly through the fruit. It's like, okay, but those things aren't necessarily, those aren't an inconsistency, because there are fundamental differences between refined sugar and sugar that comes through fruit. So this is kind of this is one of these things where you have people who are bound and determined to do one thing. And really, to me, that's what it seems like is going on, is that you have people who really just want to do something, and they're kind of the only argument that I'm seeing from the other side, from where Mechanic is basically, this isn't that big of a deal. Like, this isn't that big of a deal. You're already allowing spam via op return, via these things. So what's the big deal if we do more spam? Or like, by what basis do you differentiate between the spams? And I think there's a pretty easy way to differentiate between this. And that's why I tweeted the tweet that I did, that Jim can show right now.
Okay, sure.
Because the Mechanic talks about this in his actually, yeah. Here. Do we just want to unpack this first? Ash, you do it. You want to go for it? And then we'll get to mine. I think mine's after that one.
Oh, wait, is this the wrong one?
Yeah, it's the wrong one, but it doesn't matter. So the point is, everyone's trying to understand. Everyone's trying to figure out, like, what do we think about this? And so Ash shared this, that this guy, Brian or something, kind of gave his summary.
Yours is the one on the open marriage.
That's correct. But here, do the Brian one first, and then I'll let Ash unpack it.
So I don't feel like I'm at all qualified to speak into this. I'm just trying to listen, understand. I just felt like this dude's post did a good job of summarizing the issues that I saw being talked about. I spent some time with listening to both sides of this debate. I feel like there's Mechanic's argument is strong, and so when he was on a Twitter Spaces this week, he just makes a point about the intended purpose of something versus how you can actually use it. And so if Bitcoin's intended purpose is money, but it can be used for other things, there is an argument that says, well, let's make decisions to help it fulfill its purpose. And the other side is arguing that, well, code is law, and you have an open network and an open database, and there are financial incentives to do certain things, and you simply cannot, like, stop people. And it is more of this libertarian argument of kind of code is law, and what it is, and let it be. I don't feel like that argument is as strong. But again, I don't feel even super qualified to summarize that summary, but I think it's worth looking at.
Um, if you TLDR mechanics video, at the end, it basically boils down to, we've been saying all along that if Bitcoin Core does something that they shouldn't be doing, then we all have the right to not run their code. It's not like Bitcoin Core is Bitcoin.
Yeah.
They don't have a lock on it. Like, Bitcoin is open source and anybody can download it and fork it and do whatever. And so there's other implementations like Bitcoin Knots that people can run. And we've been saying for years that if and when this happens, people are free to switch over and just use a different implementation. And so I think what it really boils down to is that going to happen? And if it doesn't happen, is that a good or a bad thing?
Yeah.
I'm personally comfortable with it. Like, if people choose to run knots, great. If they don't choose to run knots, it'll be interesting to see if and when, the level of spam reaches the point to where people then sort of, maybe the pain has to be higher to get people to sort of wake up and care, right?
Yeah.
And so
I think the other thing though is, even if they don't switch over to knots, the question is, can this small group of people, because this is what's being debated, is should this small group of people be able to push through this change, even if it's a controversial thing, because it's clearly a controversial thing.
I think the answer is unequivocally yes.
Okay, you think that they should be willing? You think that, even though, like, the question is, what sense does it make to push through something when their entire job and the reason why they're held up as well as they are is because they're acting in the revealed interest of Bitcoiners? Because, like, if they go completely against what the consensus is, then people are not going to use them, and then they're not, like, the purpose of them being there is defeated.
So if people choose to not use them after they damage their credibility by making this decision, then that's going to be very hard for them to ever get their credibility back. And so I agree that they are risking something. They have a very big privilege in the community right now.
Yeah.
And they're risking losing that for forever. And I think that at the end of the day, if it turns out bad and the spam gets out of control, people will eventually switch and never go back.
Yeah.
So,
So, and another contrarian take, and I shared this on our group chat too. So for all the ways that I might disagree with him, I think J.W. Weatherman's contrarian takes can be helpful. So, like, he said this 20 hours ago. He says, let's not implement ineffective defenses that cause good people to fight. Let's let these moron spammer VCs spend 100 million more and then safely delete their garbage and laugh at them. Doesn't that sound more fun? So he's saying, hey, this op return, it doesn't work already. Like, it's in existence, and it's obvious that there's ways to get around it, because that's happening right now. That when all the NFT junk from last year, like, they got around op return. So we already know it doesn't work. Now he's like, isn't it? He makes an argument, you can have a soft fork where you actually just delete all of the excess data. Now, I don't know the technical ramifications of how you do that. He says you can do that. And wouldn't that be funny if they spend 100 million putting all this in there, and then we just all in 5 years delete it?
Sure. So but that's a different. So again, you're talking about what you could do. Yeah. It's like what you could do versus is this a good course of action to do this thing that's being described? Because that's the thing, is like, there is an action being put forth by this group of people to take a certain action. And, the question is, should you do that action? And so Mechanic's like, no, this is not a prudent action to take. Again, whether or not you want to do some other thing in 5 years, sure. But these two things aren't ruling each other out, I guess is what
I think the scenario you described, Bosh, is actually fairly terrifying. I like the idea of VCs losing their money, but I don't like the idea of a bunch of people, majority mob rule, deciding that my UTXO should also be deleted. And so,
Yeah.
There's an aspect that I would like to see this network ossify in that sense. So
yeah, okay. So let's try to get down, because this is where I thought this is far more interesting. And Mechanic, he like picked up on it immediately. So okay, now you can go to my tweet.
okay.
Like this is where where my mind immediately went, and why I think this is a useful conversation to have. Okay, so here's my hypothetical. Imagine a couple decides to quote unquote open their marriage. They start having sex with dozens of other couples, and in a year they end up divorcing. When asked if they had any regrets, the wife replies, "No. If our love was real and meant to last, it would have been able to endure anything." Okay. When you take something that was intended to be able to operate under certain constraints and to endure certain types of challenges and willfully neglect it by normalizing a prolonged level of abuse that's totally outside the pale, you can't throw up your hands and blame marriage as an institution. The blame lies fully with those who surrendered their reason in the name of open-mindedness and tolerance. But enough about Canada and Bitcoin Core. Okay. Now, this is the bigger point, and why I think this is a really timely thing to talk about, because this is fundamentally the exact policy that a lot of countries have undergone with immigration. Is basically, it's an all or nothing proposition. Like, we should welcome every single person possible in who's, there might be some, more left-leaning people who would say, all right, if they're murderers, we probably shouldn't let them in. But we'll just let them all in. And if you object to letting everybody in, you're somehow a hater, you're inconsistent, you don't actually care about people. That's one side. And then the other side is like, hey, we can't just do this. We can't just have unlimited immigration. We can't, even if they're sad stories, you can't just do this. Like, principally, this doesn't make sense. Now, again, this is the same thing going on with this discussion. It's an all or nothing discussion. It's basically presented as an all or nothing proposition. Either you let in every spam in the world, or you let out none of it. If you're willing to let any of it in, you're being inconsistent, and we should let in all of it. And so my thing is, this does not make any sense. This is just a fundamental misunderstanding of, 100 areas of life. Again, we mentioned the sugar example. Okay. The fact that you let some sugar in your body does not make you a hypocrite it doesn't make you a hypocrite to allow some sugar in your body versus not allowing any sugar at all. Because there's a sliding scale in which your body can process and healthily process some sugar without it threatening the life of the overall organism. And so I think that's kind of what Mechanic is in his side are trying to get at, is just trying to illustrate this point that there's even though this isn't ideal, they're being actually, I don't even know if they would argue that having Opportune in its current what is it called? In its current state, I don't think they're arguing that this is somehow inconsistent or this is somehow threatening Bitcoin. But there is a situation in which it could threaten. If you were to allow tons of spam like this, it could threaten Bitcoin's ability to operate as it was intended, and as people are signing up to operate Bitcoin or use Bitcoin, which is to send money. If you're flooding the zone with all of this spam, and it's crowding out actual transactions at a much higher degree than would be normative given the existing constraints, then yeah, you're basically the identity. You're trying to basically trans Bitcoin. You're trying to make this thing into something that it was not intended to be. And so that it doesn't surprise me at all. And Mechanic talks about this in the video. He basically says it's ironically is the same kind of issue as the left-right divide, and for a lot of the same reasons. Can something does something have an identity, or are all identities fluid, and we can make something into whatever we want it to be? And I think that my answer to that is no, things have an identity, and you can't just, if you want to make something else, then go off and make your own thing. But you can't just change the identity of something because you want to, and it's convenient for a microscopic subset of people.
It is kind of a literalist or a interpretation of the Constitution that wants to know what are the intentions of the
Authorial
authors,
Yep.
as opposed to, well, what could these words mean today? How could we find an interpretation in this for a new use case that these ancient authors could never have comprehended? Surely they do not understand the sophistication of our like monkeys on the blockchain.
I think at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what Satoshi intended or what Adam Back or anybody else intends. All that really matters when the rubber meets the road is who's running what software. And so the whole idea of Bitcoin Core should or shouldn't be allowed to do something doesn't even make any sense. There is no they to enforce that. I mean, the only they that enforces it is all of us plebs choosing what software we want to run. It's not like there's a administrator on GitHub that controls Bitcoin Core or, you know, whatever. It's all of us that are choosing to run the compiled version of their code. And so at the end of the day, I don't have a problem with Mechanic lambasting them and pointing out their hypocrisy and whatever else, but our only recourse is just to choose to run different software. That's it.
I agree and I don't agree. Because again, I agree with, like, obviously with the end state, like you can make a decision, but at the same time, like, reason is a big part of the process. Like, a reason is a big part of life, where like we have to interact with each other, and we do that through reasoned discussion. And so the fact that this process is taking place, I don't see as a waste of time at all. I see it as like
No.
Yeah.
I think his argument in pointing out their hypocrisy is 100% necessary to convince all the plebs to go through the brain damage of changing over to using Bitcoin knots or something like that.
Yes.
And the sooner it happens, the better, because the longer it goes on like this, the more it becomes an existential threat. And so I'm totally behind it.
Yes.
I get it, but I stop at they shouldn't be allowed to X.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So
yeah, I don't even know. Is anyone saying they shouldn't be allowed to? I don't know. I don't know anybody.
I think it was the post Osho was talking about. I didn't read the whole post.
Okay.
But anybody that sort of has that, I mean, look, we're going to have knee-jerk reactions like that because we live in a society that has a government, and we always want them to do something to those other people that we don't like.
Yeah.
And so that's just our whole framework. But Bitcoin's basically anarchy, right? And so we're trying to get as much consensus as we can from the other people that are shouting Bitcoin as loud as they can with this particular software versus that version of the software.
Maybe that should be the second edition of Thank God for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is basically anarchy. And just share that with all the Christians and church leaders out there.
I just don't buy it. Like, Bitcoin is not anarchy. Like, Bitcoin is like so ordered, it's not even funny. Like, it's incredibly structured and rigid and all kinds of, and like I can't remember, we talked about this on some podcasts, is like, in many ways, like, Bitcoin it's preaching a different understanding of how the world works. Whereas, like, we have like Nike, right? Nike, just do it. You know, it's just basically just don't think and just do it. And then you have like Sprite, obey your thirst. Okay, I have a desire, obey it. Like, this is one way, and like, this is presented as like a freeing way to live and a freeing way to operate in the world. And like, Bitcoin completely says the exact opposite of this. It says, hey, actually, you find value, and you're able to find and transmit value by obeying a very specific set of rules. And so I actually think that, and I've seen this in real time, like, part of the ordering of people's spiritual worlds that's happened under Bitcoin it's like a representative thing that is going on in terms of like a political awakening as well. Like, you see this with Max and Stacy, who were super anti-government in a lot of ways, and then who have come to see, like, again, there was anarchy in El Salvador in a lot of ways. Like, there was, and people are just doing whatever they feel like doing, and people's lives are absolutely destroyed as a result. And so, like, having a strong man come in the room to order things is actually super, super helpful. And so I just don't think it's as straightforward as anarchy or, even libertarianism. I just don't, I don't know. Hot take.
Well, I think that when I say Bitcoin's anarchy, I think what I'm talking about more is in the narrow sense of where is the power distributed? Is it
Sure.
distributed to one person at the top,
Sure.
or is it distributed to a bunch of plebs at the bottom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, we all have a vote,
Yeah.
and it's equally weighted because it doesn't matter if I have more money than you and I can, whatever, like
Yeah.
a node is a node is a node. It doesn't matter if it's on a $10,000 server
Yeah.
or if it's on a $500 Raspberry Pi.
Yep.
So we do all have to follow the consensus rules that represent the majority of what all the other nodes are running, but that doesn't mean that those rules are forever locked in. If a bunch of people say, I'm going to run knots, like it can change.
Yep.
So Jim, can you, if you're familiar with this, talk about what rough consensus is and how consensus actually is defined within this process?
I don't know if there's a technical term you have in mind for rough consensus, but consensus in general is just what version of the Bitcoin code are you running? And then there's a bunch of consensus parameters, like how many Bitcoin should there be? What should the issuance schedule be? What should we allow into our mempools? That's the one that Mechanic is getting hung up on, right? Because the transactions that get allowed into the mempools, Bitcoin Core, who has forked the original Bitcoin source code, has filters that have default values set for those filters, and you can tweak those as a user. You don't have to be a developer to do it.
Yeah.
So the change that's being talked about here is, I don't even think they're talking about getting rid of the filter. They're just talking about changing the default value and then not making it be configurable for normal non-developer plebs.
Yeah.
Right. So it's effectively like ramming down the change because most people don't know how to go fork code off of GitHub, and even if they did, they're probably not going to like have the incentive or the time to want to go do that. And so it's effectively like ramming down the change.
Yeah.
So when you're in consensus, you're basically running software that has values for these parameters that agree with other nodes. And when you don't, like the block size wars back in 2017 or whatever, they have like one line of code change that says blocks should be 2048 versus 1024 or whatever, and then all of a sudden those nodes are no longer in consensus with each other, and so it creates a hard fork.
Yeah. So this is what Weatherman was talking about, and I think it's related to the consensus around, do you go with a proposed change or not? And he says, if you want to understand why it's a problem for Bitcoin to be
why it isn't a problem,
why it isn't a problem for Bitcoin to be spam attacked, but it is a problem to make changes to Bitcoin Core without rough consensus, you should read this. And he's of course arguing against this proposed change, but he's like, hey, this is where the issue is, and the rough
you're arguing against it on the wrong grounds is basically
he's saying he's linking to this RFC 7282, which explains IETF's rough consensus process, emphasizing that true consensus in technical decisions like Bitcoin's protocol changes requires addressing all objections, not just counting support to avoid flawed outcomes. And so he's saying the rules for change are not a vote. It's not a popularity contest. It's look at every single objection and follow it fully through its argument and probability cases and risk factors, and you don't make changes until every objection is removed. And so here, this is related.
Yeah, but there's nobody that can enforce this.
I mean, yes, I think you're right, but I mean, I think that's what the consensus seeks to be.
Yeah, but you can again, and this is the bigger issue, right? Is you can commit yourself to it. Like, again, you can commit yourself to into the group of people. Like, hey, we're not going to make a decision unless we all like you can do this with your wife. Like
I think it just becomes okay. Bitcoin Core no longer can be called RFC 7282 compliant.
Yeah,
and people will be like, "What? What is that? And why do I care?" You know what I mean?
Yeah. Are you guys familiar with Chesterton's fence?
No.
No.
Okay. Chesterton's fence is basically this principle that if you're, it's like, here you go. I'll just read it. There exists in such a case a certain institution or law. Let us say for the sake of simplicity, a fence or gate erected across the road. The more modern type of reformer goes gaily up to it and says, "I don't see the use of this. Let us clear it away." To which the more intelligent type of reformer will do well to answer, "If you don't see the use of it, I certainly won't let you clear it away. Go away and think. Then when you come back and tell me that you do see the use of it, I may allow you to destroy it." And so it's basically like, don't tear down a fence that you don't know if you don't know the reason it was put up in the first place. Like that's
Ancient landmarks.
Yeah, don't move the ancient landmarks. This is a biblical principle. Exactly. Like, yeah, there's, the Israelites, they crossed the Red Sea and then they built this, tower of stones so that, and this is stated in there, so that when their children came to it and they said, "Mom and Dad, like what's going on here?" Like we can tell them like, "Hey, this is why this is here. The Lord led us out of Egypt, protected us, and made this provision for us." And so yeah, so it's the same kind of thing. Like you don't want to move something just for the sake of moving it or just moving it trivially. We want to be like the we want to be like the Ents when it comes to decision making.
Yeah. Dad, where were you during the block size wars? Where were you during the great consensus battle of 2025?
That's right.
I think we just have to be winsome about identifying that this is one of those cases where people are tearing down ancient landmarks and they shouldn't be doing that, and that they need to take it more seriously, and you can't just go buy your Umbrel or Start9, install your software and forget about it for forever. Like part of being a sovereign Bitcoiner is you got to go dust that thing off every now and then, make sure it's still running and make sure it's running what you want it to be running, and it's just part of it.
Yep. Agreed. Taking responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You guys want to move on?
Yeah.
Yep.
Here,
I have a hard stop at 3 or a little before 3.
40 minutes. All right, we're good.
Okay, here's one that I get over and over again from people in my life. This is a post by Swan. Bitcoin balances on exchange just hit a 5-year low. So supply shock, supposedly. Meanwhile, MicroStrategy just added 15,000 more BTC. ETFs are stacking. Sovereign wealth is circling. So why isn't the price exploding? That's the question. You guys get this question a lot?
I think about it. I don't think I get the question from people, but
so the Swan post is essentially summarized. The two answers are this whole idea that balances on exchanges are going towards all-time lows has this baked in assumption that the only people that ever want to sell Bitcoin have their Bitcoin on exchanges, which is kind of flawed reasoning in my idea. I mean, I know examples of myself and other people that hold Bitcoin in cold storage, time locked, multiple states, jurisdictions, blah, blah, blah to the max. And we don't transfer. I mean, first of all, we don't sell. But secondly, if we ever did sell, it's like you transfer it to the exchange at the very last moment and then just sell at spot. Right.
Yeah.
So, the first half of their post is essentially just saying there's a lot more demand for spot selling than people give credit for, or just even realize that that's a thing at all. And then on the backside, when institutions like MicroStrategy or sovereigns acquire Bitcoin, they don't just like go to Coinbase and execute a market buy order, for $2 billion worth of Bitcoin. They work with like OTC desks that accumulate it over a period of weeks. And obviously Michael Saylor will post things like there's not enough orange dots on Saylor Tracker and kind of make it sound like he's doing one big buy or whatever, but that's not how it works, right? And so like, because they're trying to, if they do that, then the price is going to run away from them. So thoughts, do you feel like these two dynamics are enough to explain, or do you think there's shenanigans going on and we've got paper Bitcoin all over again and all that kind of stuff?
I saw another tweet. I didn't get the link, but it basically was speculating that Mallar's, part of the thing that they're going to do is basically tweet out their address, because I guess Saylor's never, I don't think he's ever sent out the address. He's actually,
Well, I think most of it's at Coinbase custody, so I don't even
yeah,
know if he has an address.
sure, yeah. But like that would be one way to kind of like differentiate. Like if Mallar's in 21 just basically put out their address, and like when they're, what they have, and that they don't have paper Bitcoin, like that'd be kind of, somebody was speculating that could be happening.
It's like what El Salvador does.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I don't know. I would be shocked, utterly shocked, if there's not a bunch of paper Bitcoin out there. But
Really?
again, I don't know. Oh, yeah.
You're on team paper Bitcoin is the reason that we're not
I'm not
to
saying
the
that's the
moon.
reason. I guess I wouldn't make a statement on that being the reason. It just would shock me if you went from all this paper Bitcoin running around like crazy to no paper Bitcoin. Like maybe, but especially in an environment, I don't know. I just, the greed and scammers out there, like they didn't just disappear, and in some ways they were encouraged by Trump becoming president, because his sons and stuff got involved and started, altcoining rampantly. So it just would shock me if there wasn't a good amount of paper Bitcoin out there. But again, I would love to be wrong.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't think it's not even a conspiracy theory. It's not if they do. It's
Just
like
to what degree?
it's to what degree. So you can go back to FTX, and it was so clear, right? So you deposit your Bitcoin with them, and then they went out the back door and traded it. And you don't need to even impute that type of unregulated hedge fund, money laundering type of activity to exchanges. If you don't have a proof of reserves that is publicly auditable, or your books aren't public. So like Tether, they do these audits. There's a reasonable amount of transparency. I think they say, hey, here's what we have in the balance sheet. Like these other companies, if they're not doing that and they're holding a bunch of Bitcoin, I mean, unless they're legally required to not, trade it out, and there's not some auditing enforcement of it, I just don't see how that's possible that it's not happening.
Yeah. And especially if your exchange is somewhere in the world where you don't have like the strict, where you don't have the strict controls like exist in the United States and some other places. Like some of these exchanges that are operating in like the Caymans, or what was his name? Arthur Hayes, like their exchange. I don't know, man. Like there's just no way. I just refuse to accept it.
Yeah. I just did a little Grok search, and there was reportedly a point where FTX only held one Bitcoin in its reserve.
Oh, yeah.
When they owed Bitcoin promises to to the tune of 20,000 BTC.
Goodness gracious. That's
a lot. Yeah, that's a lot of extra trading going on.
The idealist inside of me says that I think the smaller Bitcoin is and the more retail focused it is, the more it's likely. And then the bigger it gets market caps wise, and then also the more sovereigns that are adopting it that have addresses that are public, like El Salvador, the less likely it is.
Mm-hmm.
I think what people just forget, so like being class of 2016, it's been a long time since we've had these like face melting rips, right? And back in those days, it was a relatively small amount of retail demand creating the face melting rips.
Yeah.
And so people are just kind of like, there's so much more demand now. Why aren't we getting the same kind of face melting rips? And I think part of the answer is it's just a much bigger boulder to move uphill.
Yeah.
And that's only going to get more true.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like people want the face melting rips, but then out of the other side of their mouth, they'll say it's too volatile, And so it's like, well, which one do you want? Because obviously the bigger the market cap gets, the more stable this, people are already calling Bitcoin a stable coin at this point, essentially, especially during all the market turmoil. And it's barely even a 2 trillion, not even $2 trillion market cap. It's just like this tiny drop in the bucket. So I don't know. That's kind of my take, but
what gold is 10? Is it 10 trillion? What's gold's thing?
yeah, gold's like 22 or
22.
it's like 10x Bitcoin right now. So we're coming for you, Schiff. Okay. Let's move on. I got another one here. So Lynn Alden. After utterly massive outperformance in the years and decades prior, Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway is about even with simply owning gold since 1998, or about 27 years ago. So we're showing a chart that essentially looks like a crazy up and to the right exponential curve, from the 1960s. And then it tops out essentially in the year 2000, crashes, and then has just sort of barely clawed its way back to where it was in the year 2000. And this is the chart of Berkshire Hathaway versus gold. So her argument is, as genius of an investor, the oracle from Omaha, Warren Buffett is, you would have just been better off, or at least the same, if you had just sold all of your Berkshire in 1998 and bought gold instead, which I'm sure if you do like a risk adjusted return on this, you'd be taking way less risk by owning gold than you would Berkshire. So what do you guys think about that?
I was talking to a buddy who basically was, he's a great dude, but he was just basically asking me, he's like, what is the point of like holding gold? Like, how are people still in 2025 making the case for holding gold? And I just basically said, I was like, man, no, there's a great case. I was like, because what it does is it does nothing for 15 years and then it'll go up, hundreds of percents or thousands of percents. And so it's like, it doesn't look as sexy, as Berkshire does. But if you're on a long enough time horizon, like, who cares if it looks sexy? Like, this is, and what it just demonstrates is it's just easy come, easy go. Like it's just tracking the monetary, like just the increasing of the money supply. You're just seeing this happen in real time. So I just think it's part of it is just propaganda from a lot of Wall Street and all these guys who just want to make fun of gold and just say it's worthless. And but again, they're peddling, they have a product to sell, so of course they're going to say that. Like a lot of these guys, it doesn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense for them to say anything other than that, given, or at least something to that effect.
Yeah, so I think maybe like what's more interesting is comparing gold to Bitcoin here. Like, do we feel like gold has the potential to demonetize other stores of value, other asset classes like bonds and real estate that currently hold more overall like aggregate value in our economy? Like, do we see gold continuing to demonetize? Like, even as gold has ripped, has it been at the expense of those asset classes, or is it really just at the expense of the Nasdaq and the S&P 500, right? Because I think what we're saying is that gold sort of has plateaued. It's reached sort of saturation, and to the extent that the money supply increases or the population increases, there may be actual real gains to be had in gold, at least on the latter one, not necessarily the money supply one. The money supply one's just moving the pie around. The pie getting bigger is an interesting argument, but and then relative to Bitcoin, like Bitcoin is on this path of demonetization of the other assets. And so you're not just storing value in Bitcoin like you are in gold. As long as we're in the period of demonetization or the steep part of the S curve, you're actually getting a real return. And yeah, it's at the expense of those other assets that it's demonetizing. So it's not like a real return global, like it's wealth shifting. We're not saying Bitcoin just creates wealth out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
I think long term, once all those become demonetized and then Bitcoin plateaus off just like gold already has for a long time, then when we're running on a sound money standard, then there's sort of effects that can happen that will make the pie bigger. But there's like two distinct phases in my mind of like we're in the demonetization phase versus the stable phase. And while we're in the demonetization phase, it's going to outperform gold from a real return standpoint.
Mm. You're saying demonetization of these other assets.
Right, because like Bitcoin, like again, gold ripping is at the expense of stocks, right? It's not necessarily at the expense of demonetizing real estate, right?
Yeah.
So now Bitcoin ripping is likely to be at the expense of gold.
Yeah, like you've got, oh man, we could have shared this too, but Bobby Shell, shout out to Bobby, of Voltage, another believer. He's the man. He was tweeting about a buddy of his who's got like a $25 million real estate portfolio who just liquidated it and bought Bitcoin with the whole thing. Now again,
let's go.
Could there be some boomers doing this, like demonetizing like doing the same thing, deleveraging and putting some of that in gold? Yeah, I could see that. I mean, again, if you don't understand Bitcoin,
I personally know several of them.
Yeah. So like, but again, to the same degree, and then again, even if that is happening, you're still like gold's price going up just incentivizes more production of gold, which then allows it doesn't allow you to reach the escape velocity like Bitcoin does.
I think people don't realize where the value of Bitcoin comes from and the fact that it's demonetizing these other things. And so when there's this comparison being drawn between gold and Bitcoin, it's like, do you really think that after 5,000 years, gold somehow is going to all of a sudden change and start demonetizing all these other things that it's had thousands of years of a chance of a head start to start demonetizing? Like, why is it going to demonetize those now versus 1,000 years ago?
I think, well, I think there is an answer to that. Part of it is going to be, if you realize you've been lied to or you've misunderstood the situation, people revert to things that are older and more trusted. I mean, you see this on a religious standpoint. You see, now again, this isn't happening anywhere near as much in aggregate as it actually appears. But like, there's people who convert. There's like Protestants and like younger people who convert to Roman Catholicism or convert to Eastern Orthodoxy. And like, why is that? Because they've experienced, man, I'm in this hot dog church that's like smoke machines and all this kind of stuff. And it just seems so fake and just not real. So I want to go find something real. I'm going to go back and find something that's ancient. That's got a 1,000-year track record or 2,000-year track record, conceivably. And so again, I'm not saying that it's right. Yeah.
There's a reason why gold hasn't demonetized real estate in the last 5,000 years. It's because real estate's a lot harder to lie about than gold.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But it's all relative, right? Like this last year was the first year, if you look at all the different asset classes and their aggregate returns, last year was the first year that Bitcoin was number one and gold was number two. Right? Bitcoin's number one, 3 years in a row, and it's the last one for 1 year. Best for 3 years, worst for 1 year. And gold is just kind of sits somewhere down the pack and just has kind of been like dormant for a good I don't want to say decade, but like just really has been underperforming for sure.
Yeah.
And then, right, when you have high volatility, when you have talks about recession, you have economic insecurity, you have this global shift, it shoots right back up into the limelight. It never went anywhere. It just sits in the background, and it's got like the stepchild treatment by Nixon, and just pushed aside, and it's still there.
That's my point, though, is the reason it's shooting up is because it's sucking value out of things like equities that have risk, right? So they're trying to risk off into gold. It's not sucking value out of real estate. It's not like demonetizing real estate. So it's like there's two different things going on here, but people are just looking at the charts next to each other saying, oh, gold's ripping, Bitcoin's ripping, which one's going to rip more? And it's like, well, do you think there's more value that can be sucked out of stocks in the long run, or more value that can be demonetized out of real estate?
Yeah. See, I just think it's a liquidity issue. You sell what you can, right? And so real estate takes longer to sell. There is a lag period there. And I see So there's real economy, there's real growth, and then there's money printing fiat fluff. And gold sits, I would argue, within, it's that sowing and reaping. It's within that real economy. It's hard money. It has a baseline bottom of what is the value of work and assets and reality. And then money printing, you add all the monopoly money and give you $1,000 every time you pass go. All real estate shoots up, everything shoots up until something pops, until something breaks, and someone yells fire, and everyone tries to run for the exits. That's where you find out who doesn't have their shorts on, right? It's all those same analogies, but I would just say the demonetization is coming back to reality, which is to the value of gold, and the utility of real estate. And then Bitcoin is going to then I would say primarily eat up that devaluation to reality.
I agree. I guess what I'm saying is, just like Warren Buffett is the oracle from Omaha and could do no wrong for 50 years while America was up and to the right, I think that a lot of Bitcoiners over the next 50 years will pat themselves on the back and call themselves, the oracle of Satoshis, because we basically just rode the wave of
Yeah.
demonetization.
Or okay, is this kind of what you're getting at? So you're saying that gold has, even if it's come down, like let's say if you have to use percentages, like gold at one point it had monetized to like level 100. Now gold has like, it's like sitting at like 20, but Bitcoin's at like 1. And so Bitcoin is monetizing in real time. Gold is like recovering its monetization. But you're saying just like there's so much farther for Bitcoin to run in terms of monetizing than there is gold to recover to run.
What I'm getting at is, like, you've seen these charts, right, where it shows all the blocks of like real estate's this big and
Yeah.
gold's this big and Bitcoin's this big,
Yes.
right? So I don't have the data to back this up, but
Sure.
my suspicion is that gold has plateaued. It's, if gold's $20 trillion and all assets are $400 trillion, it's sitting at 5% or something. And it's like, it's topped out at 5%. And yeah, maybe it goes down to 3% and up to 6%, and it kind of hovers around that or whatever, but it's like plateaued at 5% of total global store value use case. And the question is like, why all of a sudden, after 5,000 years, is it going to go to 50%? Like, why is that going to happen now? Like, what has changed? Like, is there something technologically that's changed? Like, you can't lie about how much gold you have in your vault anymore because of X, or it's easier to verify, or like.
Well, I guess the question would be, what has gold been historically? Like, what percentage of the overall wealth has that been? What was it, like 100 years ago or 200 years ago or something, right?
I don't know if we have the data, but what I'm saying is my guess is it's like been something around what it currently is, right? Like, it's been a steady state. And so, yeah, there's been more gold, but they're developing more real estate and there's more population. And so if you just view it as a percentage of that whole pie of store value, it's like 5%. And it's been that way for thousands of years.
But
so it's like,
yeah, I just don't know if I buy it. That's not intuitive to me, especially when the United States is currently still holding all of their gold reserves valued at $41 an ounce or $42 an ounce, when the actual market price is so much higher. So like, they're suppressing demand that would be there if they actually.
There's huge suppression
assuming they actually have it.
Sure, but even if they don't have it, my point is, like, they're still valuing it on the balance sheet.
If they don't have it, then it doesn't matter if they mark it up higher, because the total percentage relative to the actual amount of gold in the world doesn't change.
Yeah. Well, so, okay. Yes,
that's all I'm saying. It's
I just don't believe that they don't have any. And I could be totally wrong. They could be that degenerate, but there's part of me, and again, they haven't come out and showed us Trump, talking with the nice gold bars. We're the greatest gold bars in all the world. Like, yeah, you could be right, and if that's the case, then yeah, I'd be more convinced. But
well, I guess here's my kind of overall point is just, I wouldn't be too quick to pat ourselves on the back for being geniuses for getting into Bitcoin early. In the same way that Warren Buffett pats himself on the back for being the genius from Omaha. It's like, dude,
Yeah.
you throwing a dart at a dartboard from 1950 to the year 2000, as long as it was on the United States dartboard, you won. It's like, I'm not impressed. In the same way that people shouldn't be impressed if we become Giga Chad millionaire, whatever, it's for owning Bitcoin for the whole time, because we literally just rode the wave.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. I just am not convinced that that's actually the story. Again, like that's presuming that the percentage, overall percentage, that would be interesting to find out. I'd love to find out that information. Is like where
we can go try to find some historical data on that.
Hey,
But my guess,
just vibe code
Just
that.
vibe
Hey,
it.
I don't care about your guesses. I want vibe coded results,
okay,
Jim.
well, dude,
I want vibe coded truth.
gold is currently at like 5%. So, I mean, it's gold already is barely, it's like a little blip on the graph, right? And so it's like, it's more likely that it's been getting wrecked, right? Like there's 95% of that on this side is gold could have been higher and it's been going down to 5%, right? So it's like, if it was already up at like 95% or whatever, it's like, well, yeah, it's been, maybe it was down at 50%, but demonetized a bunch of stuff in the last 200 years and got up to 95% or whatever, but we're down at 5%. So it's like gold's had 5,000 years and the best it's been able to accomplish is 5%, or it got up to way higher and it's been wrecked since then. So it's like, in either case, it's a shitty story for gold.
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. Like, I get that. Okay, but again, if you're gonna compare these things, so because like what is the chapter that talks about? There's something that talks about like suppressing the truth. Okay, what can be known about God is plain to them. God's shown it to them. Like, but they suppress the truth. Like men suppress the truth and unrighteousness.
This is Romans 1.
Yes, exactly. There you go. Good deacon. So like you're suppressing the truth and unrighteousness. So the understood value of Christianity, Jesus, whatever, is being suppressed. It's actually way higher, but it's being suppressed by the unrighteousness of men. And so what I'm saying is, it's not at all obvious to me that in 100 years or something now again, this Bitcoin exists. So this is the fly in the ointment. Like Bitcoin exists. So I think but like if Bitcoin didn't exist, then like I would be 100% saying gold's going to be way higher from here. And I still think gold's going to be way higher relative to what it is now.
I think it could definitely rip. It could still rip. And at some point, if it becomes unsuppressed somehow and people find out how much gold is or isn't in Fort Knox, correct, like, and they revalue it to the correct, whatever, like all those good things can happen. I'm just saying it's too late. The cat is out of the bag. The apex predator is here. And so it's only a matter of time before it gets wrecked.
Yep.
So
but wrecked relative to
wrecked relative to using something for its monetary premium. Okay. Gold will always have some sort of value in electronics or using it as a coating on a spacesuit helmet or, whatever. But as a monetary premium, wrecked.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Grok is still thinking. I'll get you your chart though.
Okay. That's what's so crazy is people feel like gold is sort of this risk off ultimate safe haven asset or whatever. And when you look at it through the lens of Bitcoin, the apex predator coming along, it's actually like this really risky feeling to me, because it's like, yeah, you might put some money in gold and it might rip for the next decade, but like long term, we know it's going to zero, essentially. The monetary premium on it is going to zero. So it's like, do you really want to take that risk? Do you think it's going to be 10 years? Or do you think it's going to be 2 years? Like, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I think I don't own any gold. Okay. Cat's out the bag. I don't own any, but I would not be opposed to, like, I probably would buy some just because I think like, again, like not a ton, but like I don't think it's stupid to own. I think it's actually smart to own. I think there's situations in which
I've been a big gold bug for a long time, and I've owned a lot of gold before. I don't currently own any gold because I think it would be logically inconsistent to actually own Bitcoin and gold. The only reason I see to own gold actually is if you're planning for Teotihuacan, the end of the world as we know it, which doesn't really line up with my eschatology anymore. So I kind of,
Oh my gosh. But Jim,
yeah.
okay, you don't need to go full Left Behind to still think you could go through like a mini version of that. Like again, if you go, we have war and like something like I don't think. I mean, there's still plenty of places where gold's still super valuable in situations like that. So I don't think you have to be a full on full on Uncle Jim loony to think that there's value in having at least
I
some
guess I'm
gold.
just saying, if you really want to plan for those cases, you should buy more guns and more bullets.
That's okay. Yes, lead over gold. Okay, I could be I
Let
could be
over gold.
convinced.
So Jim was cooking the books. Grok is calling you out. 1960 is when it was 5% of global assets. Grok thinks it's 0.5% in 2015. $1 in gold versus
But wait a second.
$195
Okay, so it's already
of
getting
other
wrecked.
assets.
No, but okay.
This is the data.
I love
The
how
problem is-
Jordan's
wait,
defending gold on
no,
this
but
podcast.
what are you denominating it in? Are you denominating it in dollars? What do we like again?
Ratio of global financial assets. That's what
Yeah.
we're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
The
percentage.
value of real estate, the value of stock markets, the value
But
of
denominated in
commodities.
dollars. They're dollars, right? That's what you're
No,
denominating.
it's just relative to each other. So it's just percentage.
Yeah, it's both in
Okay.
dollars, so it's equal. It's apples to apples dollars comparisons. We're not counting it.
But
the
that's
wa-
fine. Okay, that's fine. But still, if it's so like you buy things when they're low, right? Like this, like there's part of me like how much lower can you stinking get? There's all this fake
No.
money out in the world.
I agree. That
Yeah.
that is a good argument. So, but just be honest. It's been in decline.
Yeah.
And so the question is now we know from 2015 to 2025, it has moved back up. I don't know why Grok's not giving me modern data.
Well,
I asked for the last
we
200
know
years.
that there's been a war on gold at least since 1971. They want to suppress the price
Well,
of gold.
that's
Like
what I'm
I'm not.
saying. Yeah, go
I-
back farther than 1960. Like go back to.
I-
I want to
I
see
get it,
100
dude.
years. I know.
All I'm saying is that gold has had to fight the central bankers and the governments
Yeah.
to stop this depression. Now it's being attacked by Bitcoin, which it's like the 1-2 punch. Like it's going to be too much for it.
Don't agree. Hot take.
You don't
Gold bug.
you don't think
Jordan
gold
the gold
and
bug.
Bitcoin are
No.
going to take over fiat?
Oh no. I definitely think they're both gonna. I think they're both gonna do well. That's what I'm saying. Like I just don't. You're not gonna convince me that like gold is just gonna be like some rock that no one cares. I just don't buy it. I just don't buy
Well,
it.
so you think that like in 50 years when we're on a Bitcoin standard, that gold is still going to have a monetary premium?
What I'm saying is like I would not. I know this sounds like I would not be wanting to bet against gold. I just would not want to do it.
Man, am I on the
I'll
right
bet
podcast
against-
here?
No, I'm not saying like bet against it in terms of like it's gonna be the
We-
dominant thing ever.
Yeah,
I'm
let's
just
change
saying-
the logo. TGFG. TGFG.
Let's tag Peter Schiff. He's got a new
This is why like I don't like
protege.
I don't like mocking my elders, whether they're my monetary elders or they're my other elders. I just don't like
Hey.
doing it, you know?
You know, I think gold could last for quite a while. It could be decades, but at the end of the day, I think the monetary premium is going to zero.
Okay, and okay, let's say this is true. Okay, let's say this is true. All right. So now here again, this is one of my obscure things. Okay, so now think about: is Jim McAndrew gonna want to update? Okay, he's gonna update his Bible translation to everywhere where it talks about gold being valuable. You're gonna update it to be Bitcoin so that people will understand those passages, because otherwise it will be unable to be understood. People are like, wait, what is this gold? Gold had value? We just look at gold as like we just use it for earrings now and for like computers, you know, like I just
There's a lot of things in the Bible that we have to contextualize because we don't understand
sure,
it, you know?
sure. Yeah.
So yeah, it's probably, there's going to be a Bible study 100 years from now where people are kind of like, why is it talking about gold here? And they're like, well, in the early 20th century,
Yep. Again, it's possible over search term. I just think here's what I really think. If you told me that in 150 years we moved back, like we ended up somehow large sections of the world ended up back, something happened to Bitcoin, whatever, in 150 years, and we ended up back in gold. I just think we'll be back. The world will be back at gold at some point.
You're talking about like in the end of the world scenario where the internet goes down and the grid goes down?
Sure. Like it just wouldn't surprise me if humanity ended up back at gold sometime.
Okay,
prior
I
to-
have the ultimate proof text for you, Jordan. This is like case closed. I'm
is
setting you
Revelation, baby.
straight.
Get
I
that
am setting you
revelation.
straight.
I know where you're
Revelations
going.
21:21, and the 12 gates were 12 pearls. Each of the gates made of a single pearl, and the streets of the city was pure gold, like transparent glass. Boom, gold returned to its utility value. They're literally paving the streets in this stuff.
That's true.
It's only worth the hardness and the shininess to walk on.
Agreed.
Really soft, actually. I think it said it was like pure gold. Didn't say it actually was, right?
No, it was pure gold, like transparent glass.
Transparent glass. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, it's really soft actually, so it's not great for a road, but you know.
Well, it's great for a road that you walk on, Jim. There's no Cybertrucks in heaven. I don't know if you were aware of this. You're you need to lower your time preference for your purchases with heavenly in mind.
Do we have time for one more? You guys want to do one more?
We got one more.
I don't have time for my CN one.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do
I got to go anyhow too. You're good.
Let's do the short. This one will be a short one. This is the Michael Saylor one.
Yeah, I got like 5 minutes. So.
Okay. So by the time your financial advisor says it's okay to buy Bitcoin, it'll cost $1 million. When they say it's a good idea, it'll be $10 million. And then there's a chart showing all the major financial advisors and whether or not they're prohibiting exposure right now to the ETF, or it's restricted, or unrestricted. And most of them, like over half of them, are prohibiting it, and more than half of them have restrictions. There's only a few that have unrestricted exposure.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think?
Why do you have a financial advisor? No, okay, actually, I'm being sarcastic.
So it was Josiah was in your panel, right, Jordan? At the
Oh yeah.
What was the guy's name? Yeah, he was sort of the traditionalist. They were calling him financial advisor. So, and he very much wanted to defend, the value that he was adding. So, is there value in financial advisors, or are the incentives all misaligned and we can't trust anything they say?
So, my quick thought, I think our nonprofit has a wealth manager, and our board are fiduciaries, and we did our due diligence to hire a wealth manager and a team that we thought would help us steward our assets well. We're not professional investors. We don't trade. That's not our primary calling. But in our case, we hired a wealth manager that would sign off on our purchasing of Bitcoin. And for me, that was a necessity. That was a bottom line. You are qualified if you at least understand this enough to know that making an allocation to this asset is not just folly, but is actually a reasonable and potentially fruitful decision. And so we shopped around until we found a wealth manager that let us buy it and gave us the place to do that and encourage that process. They did temper it, and I think we would have been more aggressive if they hadn't said some things. But that's why you have a board of directors, right? It's not all on one person to make a decision. But we chose a wealth manager that gave us that option, and I still have fun trolling my wealth manager, showing him how much better my part of the portfolio is performed than his.
Yeah.
I think things are changing with the ETF, because obviously before, to get Bitcoin exposure, you just had to withdraw funds, and then it wasn't assets under management anymore. I think now it's like, okay, if you want to, but again, like they're probably going to recommend you put it into the ETF, so that way they can still have it as assets under management and take their fee, right?
Exactly.
And yeah. So
yeah, there certainly is a potential or a definite conflict of interest. Like I think that's the big problem. Now, again, guys like Josiah, to defend him, they basically only get paid out of you making money. Like he's one of those. I don't know if it's a fiduciary. I don't know what it's called, but like they don't just make a flat fee regardless. Like you actually have to make money for them to make money. So even if I think he's, if
don't you mean just money printing and the debasement of currency?
That's exactly right. That's right.
Isn't that?
Take that, Josiah. Gosh.
So, but a lot of people like already have their financial advisor from decades past, right? And so they have these relationships, and there's like a pretty big barrier to just canning somebody that, especially if you like are friends with them, and
Yeah.
like it's really hard, right?
Yeah. That's career advice. Don't become friends with your financial manager. It'll make it harder to get rid of them when you realize Bitcoin obsoletes them, makes them obsolete.
Yeah. Okay. Well, closing thoughts.
I just want to say, I literally think that humans are going to be around on the earth for like thousands of years more. So like, again, if Bitcoin can somehow come up with a way to exist for thousands of years, great. Like if it can't, then,
Just thousands?
we're going to be back. Well, no, I'm saying on this side,
At least thousands.
yeah. I'm saying on this side of eternity. Like I'm saying,
Are we talking about the millennium? I mean, is the like new heavens and new earth? We're still going to be on this earth.
sure. Well, it'll be a new heaven and new earth.
Yeah, it's the same earth.
But are we going to need money then? I don't know.
Well, the money is the street pavers. We already covered this.
Well, that's my point. Well, it's been retired. It's gold has been retired for this purpose.
I think we might be around a lot longer before the new Earth happens.
So this, but wait a second. So you think we're going to be using Bitcoin for thousands of years?
So there's a fascinating series of articles
Ooh.
called "The Law of Hash Horizons." Have you read this?
No.
Hash horizons.
What? Next episode.
We could definitely get into it on the next episode. It's absolutely fascinating. I think that it's very possible that, I mean, when you think about how many Christians or just how many humans have existed ever, like maybe some estimates are like 100 billion humans.
Yeah.
What if we're around for millions of years and there's trillions of humans? Think about how many Christians there could be.
Yeah.
It's hard to understand, like, why would God cut it off at a trillion? Why would he cut it off at a quadrillion?
Yeah.
Why would he create a universe that's so large? Maybe it's just a flex, but I could totally see humanity existing for millions of years.
Yeah.
And expanding to the stars. And what's interesting is that once you get outside of a certain orbit around Earth, it becomes impractical to contribute hash rate to the network because the block time is 10 minutes and the speed of light starts to matter.
Yeah.
So it's talking about sort of different blockchains. It's different blockchains at different scales, right? And so you almost have like planetary blockchains. Bitcoin, and it's actually crazy because I don't know if Satoshi actually thought through this all the way. He probably did. But it's like its consensus parameters with block times at 10 minutes actually make it like a planetary scale blockchain, and it won't really work for like a solar system scale or a galactic scale. And so then you end up kind of having multiple layers of blockchains at different scales, and like the galactic one has block times that are like 100,000 years. And so you end up kind of having these floating exchange rates between the different scales of blockchains. Anyways, we can get into it more, but I could totally see Bitcoin existing in a broader ecosystem of larger blockchains, where it's like, and it could literally just be Bitcoin copied, but with the consensus parameter of the block time being set to 100,000 years instead of 10 minutes,
Yeah.
And so anyways,
we are going to Mars, and so this will be a conversation. And
he talks about it in the article. He talks about it being like Musk coin or something because it's, the Martians feel disaffected by the Earthlings that control all the hash rate, and so they spin off their own blockchain that's like local to their planet. It's like an amazing article. You should definitely go check it out.
We definitely need to talk about this on a future episode, if only so I can make my space travel is satanic argument. This is one of my favorite pet.
Wait, you're steely manning it, or you actually believe that?
Oh, I believe that. It's a hardcore.
Space travel is satanic.
I will have you convinced by the time you'll have me convinced we can potentially go to every planet alive someday, and then I'll be like, yeah, but even if you could, it'd be satanic. It'd be
Okay,
awesome.
well,
Tower of Babel 2.0.
Look who you're talking to here. So,
all right, Moon Boy, you're good. Yeah. All right, Jim.
Okay.
Ashwa, appreciate you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Great conversation,
Thanks
guys.
for your time. Yep, grateful for you guys. We'll see you on the next episode.
And we got to stay on, right, while you stop recording and uploading. Is that a thing?
Yeah, that is a thing that we have to do.
Okay, so
whether it
cut
was
the
worth
show.
interrupting my end of the show, I don't know if it was or not. But
we were doing it live. We're doing it live.
Anyhow, it's great to have you on this episode of what today is called the To the Unknown Pod. We'll see if we stick around with that one or if we come up with another one. Grateful
We're going to have to get that one by Tim.
Yeah, grateful for y'all. Chat soon.